It's the midweek, which means my first question for Dylan Butler is which cup of coffee are you on, sir?
Two, and I'm working tonight's matches, so two of TBA. There could be several on the
Right
day.
there with you. Except that mine, I've never been a coffee guy. So this is me as I show it to
Two,
you on the Zoom
yeah.
side of things. It's the soda for me versus the coffee. Before we get into soccer, last night, those of us who are broadcasters saw that Vin Scully passed at the age of 94. And for a lot of us, it's like, man, that was still too soon to lose somebody like Vin. What are some of your favorite Vin Scully memories?
I would say two that immediately stand out. Two World Series games, right? The Buckner, the slow roller down the first base line, right? At Shea Stadium, that was one, and then the Kirk Gibson moment was another. Just iconic World Series baseball sports moments that he was the voice of, right? So you're right. He lived the full life for sure, but even at 94, you're like that was too soon, right? So definitely, the term "goat" gets passed around too much, I think, today by those crazy kids. But I would say he for sure in the broadcast in the sports broadcasting world, he was absolutely the goat.
There are two broadcasters I will admit that I am intimidated by and had been in my career. One is Vin Scully, and the other is Ernie Harwell.
Mm.
And you sit there and it's like, can I actually go and talk to this person? Can I spend 15 seconds with them and say hi, love your work or whatever? Not like 97,000 other people don't do the same thing.
Right.
But that happened to me with Scully, all the times covering the Braves and everything. Dodgers come to town and you're just kind of like, I don't know if I can go there other than turning into somebody who would just, stumble over their words in a business where we're not supposed to stumble. But Ernie Harwell got to actually uh, get past that moment and had a great sit down with him one time. But yeah, those for me are one and two. Harwell and Scully and Harwell, they for me are one and two.
Yeah, being in this area, it was always when I was a kid, it was always Marv Albert. Like just listening to him on the radio, Rangers, Knicks, and then on the TV side of things, that was always the guy that you kind of emulated or tried to be like. I admit a few times during a basketball broadcast, I've dropped in a few yeses. It's hard not to.
We've all done it actually, and
Yeah,
I'm sure that we all have our Marv Albert impressions that we
for
always
sure.
try to do in voice, as a bit of an homage to those kind of guys. But I couldn't let that pass. I know I went down the YouTube rabbit hole last night,
Sure.
as you and I are talking, and probably spent a good half hour, 45 minutes just doing those kinds of things, looking for those moments and things like that. But I wanted to ask about Vince Scully before we got into the actual soccer. And my first question for you has to do with last night. And I guess I'll just phrase it this way. What in the blue hell happened at Red Bull Arena?
You had to say blue, right? You're gonna get the Red Bull fans upset.
What? Yeah.
using, using
What
that
in
color
the? So then, well, I can't say
in the red
claret, can I?
hell.
What?
Yeah,
What? Because it was red hell, claret hell. What in the hell happened last night?
it's to me, it's becoming worrisome, right? Where you have that performance in Orlando, uh, where you have an early lead, right, and then you just get run over um, by the Lions, and then you turn that around, and then you have a 2-0 lead, a 3-1 lead, and you concede five again. So that's back-to-back matches. Granted, not in the league that you've conceded uh, five goals. That's not good, right? So what you wonder is, and I don't know if it's fair to necessarily call it a system problem, right? Like I think it's easy to sort of say, well, you can't press like lunatics for 90 minutes in the summer heat on short rest and expect a result. But I harken back to the Jesse Marsh era, and And even, when Jesse leaves midway through the year and Armas takes over, they win the Supporters Shield. They were still that team, right? And they still found the way. So I don't necessarily think it's just the system. I think it's maybe issues within the personnel, I guess. But that's that's just not acceptable, right? It can't be. To lose a game like that where you had a pair of 2-goal leads and you had them at home as well.
Then late night, Seattle gets the win against FC Dallas. And so Seattle, and we'll get into this later when we tuck into the week that will be, Seattle plays on a Tuesday night. Then they get to hop on a plane and head to Atlanta for the first match on Saturday afternoon. Thank you, schedule makers.
Yeah, and a big one too for Seattle. To look, they are in. I think probably if you poll fans and pundits, I would say I would probably put the number at 70% at least believe that Seattle will make the postseason, right? Just they'll find the way because they always do.
Right.
But that said, they're still in a playoff chase. They're still in a fight. So last night's win was big because it's against a team in FC Dallas that they're comparable to, that are also in that similar fight. So big 3 points there for them to get those in that spot and then go to a struggling Atlanta team where I'm sure there'll be some emotions for Gonzalo and all that storyline that comes with it. But most importantly for them is a chance to maybe get on a bit of a run. And also, most important, I would say, is that you get Raul Ruidiaz back, at least off the bench, 25 minutes. He's not 90 minutes fit yet, but that was big to get him back into the fold and get him a bit of a run.
DC and Orlando, and I'm working my way backward into the weekend. Yep. DC and Orlando, or as some folks either say, Orlandon't, or Orlando at this point when you're trying to spell what's going on. Tell me if you've heard this before. Orlando City has a late lead against DC United and gives it up. DC United scores at 90+1, 90+5, gets the Duke, and Wayne Rooney gets his first win. But it was just another one of those crazy ones where the folks in Central Florida are sitting there and looking at themselves going, what if? And what if turned 3 points into 0 points by the end of it all. Wayne Rooney got a Duke.
Yeah. So from the Orlando perspective, was it a little bit of Open Cup hangover, right? Like where big emotional, maybe biggest win in the club's history against Red Bull, and then you kind of assume or think that you have it in the bag, and against DC, which you don't. So a bit of a slap in the face for them, for sure. And they're a team as well that's just they're not consistent, right? They're just when you think that you have them figured out, they go the other way. So it's when you think they're maybe not a good team, they get a good result. When you think that they're on their way, they get a bad result. So hard to get a gauge on them. For DC, again, I think the season's certainly lost, but you build towards next year. And that's an emotional win and a big one too for Rooney, right? In his first time out since getting his work visa cleared and all that. So a nice one for DC, certainly a difficult defeat for Orlando. There's no doubt about it.
Ravel Morrison, your hero. Trust me, if Ravel Morrison's your hero, you got problems. It seemed like this past weekend you dealt in the extremes. Either it was a goalless draw or 11 billion goals were scored. And it seems like 9 of the 11 billion came from Philadelphia against Houston. I can't remember the last. I think the last time it took Philadelphia to score 6 goals was it took four matches to do it.
Yeah.
But, you put 6 up against Houston, then you have 2 8-goal games that end up being 4-4 draws. When you look at the profound amount of offensive side that happened last weekend, what are some of your takeaways in 2 8-goal thrillers and a 6-goal wipeout by Philadelphia?
Yeah, so we'll go chronological a little bit. It starts with Minnesota, Portland. That started the week off, and uh, it's funny, right? Sebastian Blanco scores like off the kickoff, right? Just Swiss cheese defense by Minnesota, and it's funny. You always are like, "Wow, is that the fastest goal?" And you start googling and checking, and it's amazing because Mike Grella still is that guy, right? I think it was 6 seconds off the kickoff for Grella when he was with the Red Bull. So that's one I don't know if that's gonna get beaten, right? Like I think you almost have to. You get the opening kick, and then you just hope that the keeper's off his line, maybe, and score that way. Even there, I don't know if you're going to beat 6 seconds, but so great start. Sebastian Blanco does his thing. He kind of plays a cool villain role, right, in Minnesota. That's one too where they've had some testy matchups, and then Minnesota comes right back, right, and Reynoso does his thing, and then Portland comes back, and there's a bad own goal that Adrian Heath quickly backed his goalkeeper and said that there was a deflection, but still, that's one that Dane St. Clair should get. So you wonder, right? Like post game, who's thinking what, right? Like who? So Heath is upset that it's points dropped. That's one, especially considering I think it ended up being like a 3-1 lead. I want to say at one point, right? That's when they should win. And then Savarese wasn't happy certainly to concede 3 off of that opening goal, but they're on the road. It's a point. And the funny thing about the whole thing is, and we spoke about it going in, and it was one of the reasons why I was looking forward to this game, was both teams had this great unbeaten run, and it continues, right? Like, so even in all the madness, Portland, it goes to 8 unbeaten, and Minnesota goes to 7 unbeaten. So that was the first one, and then Philly, just slaps around Houston. Listen, what are we now? We're early August.
Mm-hmm.
Are they peaking too soon? That's my question about them, because right now they it's looking like a collision course between Philly and LAFC for the Cup, and certainly for the Supporters Shield. They're not conceding. Now they found a way, against Houston, obviously, but to score in bunches, multiple guys scoring goals. It's another homegrown youngster who scores a ridiculous free kick, right? Like we saw that from Paxton Aronson. We saw that from Quinn Sullivan. I feel like all of their young guys, they can only score these like golazos. And the latest is Jack McGlynn. But like I said, you just wonder, like, is it too soon? Like, are they hitting their stride? Is there even more left? Because that's scary if there is, right? Like if they're not at their best, that's certainly scary. So that was at 6-0. And then, MLS After Dark, we always sort of say it's about like the West, right? And about like San Jose, Salt Lake, those matches. Miami's got a nice little MLS After Dark.
So is that MLS After Dusk?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, you get Mark Anthony out in the crowd, right? And he's enjoying all the atmosphere, and crazy. I think that was even crazier for me than the Portland Minnesota match, maybe because we just saw that one. But you get an Higuain first half hat trick, right? So Miami's on their way, and then you get braces from Brenner and Brandon Vasquez, right? So now they don't they completely flip the script. And the funny thing is, I'm on the desk for MLS, and we're going over like, all right, so the storyline is going to be this, Brandon Vasquez back in the U.S. national team conversation, and then it's like Miami, another great victory for them. Higuain, like their storylines are popping up as these goals were scoring, and then they need McVay to a really nice goal too for a defender, right? Left foot in the box. Remarkably, of all this barrage of goals, 2 of the nicer ones and 2 of the ones that are up for goal of the week, McVay and McGlynn, were both first MLS goals, right? And McVay scores it at the absolute death. And then you get another, world-class interview from Phil Neville, right? Where he says that they defended like little boys. So He's becoming one of those must watch press conference guys, I feel like, because there's so many wild results for them that you don't know what Phil Neville's going to say. So that was an interesting post match for Miami, and yeah, you're right. Like, you think it was just an entire wild weekend, but in reality, it was kind of those three matches uh, that kind of brought that feeling that everything was crazy. When in reality, it wasn't.
When you mentioned all of the games where if you looked at your juice boxes and you took the over, you made a killing. Go to the flip side now, and if you took the under on a lot of them, you probably offended the juice box purveyors just as much. You had only one goal in Dallas with Dallas and LAG, Nashville and Vancouver, a 1-1 draw. I've got concerns about Nashville and have ever since Open Cup. Revs in Toronto, CF Montreal in my CFC, Chicago Fire, Atlanta United, all goalless draws. So you had 1, 2, 3, 4 matches where a total of only one goal was scored. That's crazy on the other side of it, where you had
sure, yeah,
three games. You had 3 games where you had 22 goals,
right.
And then you've got 4 games with 1 goal total.
Yeah, like I was gonna say, when you see those, especially the week starts with a 4-4, then you're gonna be like, this is gonna be one of those like 60 goal weeks, and it wasn't. It was like 30 something goals, I think, that were scored on the week. But what, 8, 16, 22
Yeah,
were scored in 3
22
matches.
and 3.
Yeah, that's mind-boggling for sure.
And so let's see, 22 and 3. Add 2 is 24, 26, 27. 27 and 4 is 31. 3 on Friday Night Football is 34. 3, so 37 total, and 3 of them had 22 of the 37.
Yeah.
When you
that's
look
a
at the
large percentage.
Yeah, when you look at the teams that in the matches that didn't score, you look at Galaxy. I think that once again we still don't know which Galaxy team we're going to get on any given day. I think that with Austin, they did what they were supposed to do in beating Sporting Kansas City at Children's Mercy. Nashville, I have concerns. Toronto, I don't know which team I'm going to get. Am I going to get the one that scored 4 and blew up Charlotte at home, or am I going to get this one on the road? And then CF Montreal, soon to be Impact, probably, hopefully, maybe, and NYC. That one I kind of anticipated was going to be a bit of a joust, and it was going to be a tough one. When you look at those, and the Chicago and Atlanta, obviously a goalless draw as well. When you look at those teams in those matchups, what are some of your takeaways from those guys?
I go back to the New England Toronto match, right, where a PK. Well, I'll say this first before I go into the PK. The Petrovic has been phenomenal, right? Like, there was, for me at least, a concern, right, when you lose one of, or arguably the league's best goalkeeper, certainly who was last year, in Matt Turner. Like, how do you replace that guy? And the early returns are that they've landed a great goalkeeper in Petrovic, right? Like, he made some saves during the match itself that were very good, and then he makes a terrific PK save on a PK that it still boggles my mind why it was even awarded. That's another conversation, surely, but ball don't lie, right? So Petrovic made a great save, and there were some moments in that one too that it was open, that the end of that match was exciting, but ended up being a 0-0. Yeah, you're right about Toronto. They're still trying to figure themselves out. New England as well. But and Galaxy too, you mentioned, right? Like, rumors certainly of an addition there coming as well, right? In the attacking third. So
yeah.
So that should change. You would expect their fortunes a little bit. We'll see. And a lot of the storylines with NYCFC Montreal, I don't know if are necessarily fair, where they're like, post Tati, they didn't score. Like, again, they've been without Tati a couple times this year. They have scored. It was just, I think you were more on point with your assessment. It was just the matchup and the game against Montreal in Montreal. That one was going to be hard to find goals, period. So I don't think it was necessarily about NYCFC trying to figure things out post Tati, rather just the matchup against the Montreal team.
Let's go between the sticks for a second. Piece of news that came out with Gaga Slonina. Congratulations for getting signed by Chelsea after this season. Signed or purchased, $15 million, loaned immediately back. So how does that work? Does he fly to Chelsea and then he fly back to Chicago, or does he go with the transmogrifier? Where it's like the Star Trek communicator. You go, you sign your deal, you hit the communicator, you come back, everything's fine. The concern that I have about this signing is the same concern that I have with Matt Turner. Are you going to play? Jarrett and I had this conversation earlier this morning. Great that Chicago got this deal done. Slonina, fantastic talent, young kid, $15 million sell-on fee, great piece of business by Chicago. Matt Turner, I think, going to Arsenal, he's not going to unseat Aaron Ramsdale anytime soon. He will be cup and competition guy. Slonina, is he going to play starting in January? No, I think Mendy's the number one here. Is this another case in your mind where great signing, for an MLS team from a financial standpoint, but not necessarily the best thing for the player and the player's development over time? I have a concern about it as much as I do with Matt Turner. What about you come, say, January and beyond?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's two ways to think about this with Slonina, right? Like, he's still very, very young. So to me, there's no doubt that Chelsea are going to loan him out so he can get his minutes. Maybe that loan doesn't happen immediately. Maybe in January, who knows, even until the end of the year, it's stay with us, experience this atmosphere or this environment as you transition to the English game, and then loan him out for the following year. I think they see it as, Chelsea sees it as a move for the future, certainly. I'm not as concerned about Gaga as I am Turner, because he's not part of the fold right now for the national team, right? Like, I'm thinking current right now, World Cup, keepers need to have minutes. They need to play. So yeah, there's concern for me with Turner. Now, Stefan made the move to Burrow, right? So he's going to get time. Will Turner get time, like you said, probably more in that Stefan role last year, that, in the various cup competitions. But for Gaga, again, I'm not as concerned. I thought on Football Americas, the show I guess they have on ESPN Plus, I thought there was a great conversation with Greg Berhalter that Herc and Sebastian had about these players, these young players from MLS going to Europe, and he says, I like it. He liked the Turner move because it was he said it's a storyline, just in terms of a guy a couple years back playing at Fairfield University, not drafted, suddenly Arsenal call, you've got to go if you're Turner. But he said, generally speaking, he likes a guy to leave MLS after they've dominated the league, right? Like, dominate where you are and then go, right? So in essence, you could say Turner did that, right? He was at the top of his game at MLS before he left. A George Bello, for example, wasn't, right? Like, he wasn't the best guy or one of the best outside backs in the league when he left. And there's been a struggle for him, right? Like, you could say, you could say the same. His name is escaping me, from FC Dallas, right? Like not Richards, who just made the move, but it's killing me. But anyway, this one though I think is a little bit different for Gaga, because again, he is so young, and goalkeepers have this big stretch of a window to mature and be better. I think it's a great financial move. You just hope, the hope for him, for me, is he doesn't turn into a Matt Miazga, right? Who never plays for Chelsea, and he's just loaned 15 different times because that's the contract that you signed, and you have no use for him. You can't sell him because you're going to hit him for a loss, so you just bounce him around Europe. So I hope that's not the case for Gaga.
Dylan Butler, MLSsoccer.com, hanging out with us for another couple of minutes on his normal midweek visit on his second cup of coffee. Trade deadline coming up. See, the secondary transfer window, phraseology. Secondary transfer window closing tomorrow. Who are you anticipating making moves? Who do you think stands pat? And who may surprise when it comes to tomorrow's deadline?
I don't know if I'm ever surprised, because
whatever happens.
Because I just that there's not necessarily transparent. Like, we don't know what GAM and TAM and all the, we don't know what these teams have necessarily, right? Like, you can guess based on other moves during the year, but
and that's a problem for me.
Sure.
The fact that you don't know what you don't know.
I agree.
I think that if the league was more transparent with these things, like we've seen with other leagues, like with NBA, you know what cap is, you know what luxury tax is, in Major League Baseball, National Hockey League, you know what the limits are. And I think it's counterproductive for fans to be able to follow, especially as you're coming up to the close of a window, if you don't have this information and you're left guessing like we're doing right now.
No, I agree 100%. And I think it takes the fun out of it too, right? Like, if you're a fan and you know what your team has to spend, you start kind of playing Football Manager. You're like, oh, I can get this guy, or we can get him, or you start looking at transfer market and websites like that. So that said, you kind of look at who's got designated player spots open. Toronto still does, right? They could potentially make their move in the winter, or they can make a push before this window closes. LAFC, another one, right? Who could certainly, they've got that ability to do that. I feel like I'm always intrigued with Atlanta, right? Because who knows right now with them, or is that could it be more of the same, where again, you look to get a guy, you think he's better than the last, and then he struggles. So it's NYCFC, I said it, I think, last week. I don't think they need to find a Tati replacement. I think they need to find a Keaton Parks replacement, so they could be in that. I think because the league is there's so much parity and there's so much on the line. I feel like a lot of teams are talking right now, right? There's still a lot of conversation going on. And I think teams, Charlotte is in my head too. I think they're still, they've left themselves wiggle room to make a move. Again, whether it's in this window or the winter. So not trying to not answer your question, but I guess my true answer is I wouldn't be surprised at anybody making moves. Certainly LA Galaxy seem to be the closest right now to making a move. Because I think everybody needs, even in LAFC, right? They've got the ability to maybe even go a step further and really put their foot on things. Even a team like that at the very top, I think it's still better themselves. So I wouldn't be surprised by them making a move either.
All right, getting into the matches. Double match week for those of you playing fantasy. And for those of us who started Carlos Coronel in our fantasy league, that was not a good call.
Or if you started Diego Rubio, that's a good call.
Yeah, so for me, trying to get double points, and you get all your collective points adding up for a match week. And yeah, the Carlos Cornell got me 1 point last night for that first matchup. So yay me. You got 4 matchups tonight. Charlotte, DC. So Charlotte plays twice. They host DC and Chicago. Crew plays twice. They host Montreal and NYC on the weekend. Portland plays twice. They host Nashville and Dallas. San Jose actually has to split. They host Inter Miami, first time ever those two play. Then they go to Austin. Friday Night Football, Vancouver, Houston. On the weekend, CF Montreal, Inter Miami, DC Red Bulls, Cincinnati, Philadelphia. What stands out to you for the midweek and the weekend?
All right, we'll go midweek. There's got to be. I mean, I'm fast forwarding, but there's got to be craziness in San Jose, Miami. No,
absolutely.
Like that's going to be insanity.
Mm-hmm.
I think so. For sure, that one, which will probably be my 7th cup of coffee, I'd imagine by that time. I think Columbus, Montreal is interesting too. Even Portland, Nashville, like you said, Nashville struggling right now. They go out to Portland, and Portland's on that good run of form. So, yeah, I don't have a ton of interest, honestly, in the Charlotte DC match, but I like the other 3 for sure. And then you look forward to the weekend. You've got, I wish it had more heat. You have one of the oldest rivalries in MLS and DC Red Bull. That's, I think, the emergence of NYCFC and Philly as contenders for Red Bull kind of has taken that steam out a little bit, right? So that's maybe not as interesting. I think, again, that Atlanta-Seattle match we've referenced earlier, certainly an interesting one for me. Yeah, just going down.
That's what I'm saying. There's not a lot
Colorado,
of
Minnesota is interesting. I like that one.
Yeah,
that'll be one I think I'll go outside the box with. I think Colorado, Minnesota, RSL, LAFC. Those are 2 that definitely piqued my interest.
All right.
Later on Saturday.
So what's going on MLSsoccer.com other than you being on 7 cups of coffee today?
Yeah, just that really. Busy times. Good times, certainly. And then for OSDB, gonna have a story. I know other outlets have done this as well, but sort of, as we look forward to free agency next year, some of the top candidates for who will be out there, right? Like off the top of my head, Aaron Long, Red Bull don't quite have the history of keeping their captains, do they? They lost Sean Davis to Nashville. Could Aaron Long be the next one? And I can't imagine there'll be any shortage of suitors for Aaron Long, especially after likely playing in the World Cup as well, right? So I think he's one. I think NYCFC have a few. They do a better job of keeping their guys. Sean Johnson and Anton Tinnerholm, Alex Collins come to mind as 3 others. Who could be on the move. And look, free agency is not, the big time event that it is in the NBA or other leagues. But look, Albert Rusnak, right, goes to Seattle, and the biggest move yet in free agency. Ozzie Alonso was a big move until he got hurt. So I think there's certainly quality there to be had in the free agent market. And as they lessen the restrictions in free agency, I think we'll see even more and more quality and it becoming a bigger deal.
Dylan_Butler on the Twitters, OSDB and MLSsoccer.com. I will leave you to your naps and your coffee. I know it's going to be a busy day / night for you. We will catch up with you hopefully next week. Might be from a Zoom in a van on I-95. We'll test my Wi-Fi next week when we tape this.
Oh, I look forward to it.
Good, Dylan. We'll see you next week.